Friday, a football Friday here, and Coach Doug Martin's been good enough to join us here, play caller for ECU on offense, and head coach Kent State, New Mexico State, not at the same time, different tenures. And Coach is on here with us. It's fall down at the coast, and that means certain fish are biting, and this is just, what a time to be you. What a time to be you here in the fall. That's all I got to say. You're tailgating, you're catching fish. This is awesome.
I never realized that there was a life like this out there, Patrick. I would have stopped 30 years ago. But yeah, we did the tailgating last week. Coach Logan and I were out on the boat fishing just yesterday again.
Oh, okay.
Our second trip we've had, and
that's good.
So it's been great.
Yeah, that's good. That's kind of a cool, I guess, different layer to the relationship with Coach. I mean, just to go fishing, that's pretty darn cool.
Well, you know what? I was with Steve for 10 years there at East Carolina, and we developed a really strong relationship. And I'm, really grateful to him, everything he did for me and my family. And over the years, we've just become really close friends. When I was coaching at New Mexico State, he came out and spent some time with us there and worked with our quarterbacks. And, we visited. When he was at Tampa Bay, I went and stayed with him for a while. And so it's been a great relationship.
And then Jerry McManus was there as well with you guys, right?
The funniest guy in college football, Jerry McManus. That's exactly. If you've never gotten to sit down and listen to Jerry McManus tell a story, you're missing something. But yeah, it was great seeing Jerry too.
All right. So in week 1, you tailgated at Wake Forest.
Right.
Nice warm up.
Kind of the FCS game, like we talked about.
And then you tailgated at ECU. Now it rained. It wasn't the greatest tailgate weather. Still.
Listen, it was power conference tailgating. It was a blast. I know the weather wasn't great and all that, so I can only imagine what it's like when the weather is fantastic. But we got to see some people we hadn't seen in 20 years, which was great, and meet some new people there. And everybody is always so hospitable around East Carolina. And the food was outstanding, and so it was just a great time. Coach Logan and I, Jerry McManus, and then we spent the day together there. Great time.
Coach Doug Martin's with us. I hope you'll come back to a game for the seasons. I hope you come back.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. We will definitely be back. We're going to catch a couple of Wake Forest games the next 2 weeks, and then but we'll be back to East Carolina too.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about you. I want to pick up on something you just talked about there, and that's the good thing about these chats with you is that we can kind of go a bunch of different places. But, you talked about, Coach Logan visiting with you when you were a head coach at places, and then you going down to Tampa. A lot of coaches, I've always found, and then, Donnie Kirkpatrick's gone out a couple of times to Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, and that sort of thing. I'm sure he wants to get out to Los Angeles now, because who wouldn't want to go to sunny California? But a lot of that does go on. Coaches will visit with one another, and you kind of pick each other's brains a little bit when they're in that professional setting, I guess, and you're kind of looking in a little bit.
Yeah, coaching's a fraternity, and you'll get your group of guys, and you visit a lot. I mean, when I was at East Carolina, we actually had a weekend where we brought in coaches from all over the country, and we just trade ideas and things like that. And then went down to Auburn when Noel Mazzoni was offense coordinator. Noel and I were friends, and he did the same thing, and so we'd go visit there. So yeah, it's a good way to to expand your knowledge and stay ahead of the game, and also just keep relationships steady.
We've got Coach Doug Martin on the line with us here on the Patrick Johnson Show. We'll get kind of your thoughts on ECU ODU in a minute. There were all kinds of upsets and crazy close games around college football this past week. Most notably, Appalachian State upsetting A&M last week. And I guess you've talked to some of these coaches. You've talked to the guys, some guys on the A&M staff. You've talked to some Ohio State. Played particularly great, but I mean they won, but I think they dropped a spot in the poll. And obviously Notre Dame got beat by Marshall. So it's cool. We're getting the story from the App State perspective and the Marshall perspective, and rightfully so. But it's kind of interesting to hear from those other staffers and coaches that were on the wrong end of that.
It is, Patrick. I talked to a couple of guys at A&M, a couple of guys at Ohio State, Alabama, who didn't play exceptionally well either. And it's interesting getting their take on things. And, we've talked about we're in unnavigated waters now in college football with NIL and transfer portal and all those things. And there's some residual effects, I think, of that people didn't anticipate. One is that NIL money. You know, several of those assistants at those schools really felt like it's hard to get kids right now out of Texas A&M to concentrate, have team chemistry, get ready to play, have that be the meaningful part, because they're all chasing money now. You know, they're all chasing NIL money, wanting to know how much they're going to get. And there's so much white noise out there that they're listening to. And it's harder to get them to concentrate and focus on what they need to focus on. And I could see that being a problem. I don't know if that's a theory. I don't know if that's true or not, but
yeah,
certainly, you know, you can look at the way they played. Utah State was another one that came down and lost, and Notre Dame, like you mentioned. And I mean, I think that's having an effect. It's harder to get kids to focus at those places, get kids to focus on the football part of things instead of the business part of things.
You know, that's part of the deal too with, you know, rookies in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's a big adjustment for them, that influx of money, how to deal with it all. And I mean, so it's really rare if you see a rookie come in and have this huge impact. You know, they might play well, but I mean, you know, that part of their challenge, I'm sure, is balancing, you know, all of that business, that off the field, the obligations. And so at least now there's people in place, you know, at the pro level that kind of help you navigate some of that, because teams have put people in place to that. I guess these universities, of course, some of them are so flush with money, they got to spend it anyway from the team. You may have to hire some people that's kind of part of their deal. I'm not talking compliance, I'm talking just help these athletes deal with it.
No, I think you're exactly right. And like I said, I don't think that was anticipated, but you think about it, you know, an 18, 19-year-old kid going off to college for the first time, that's a big transition. You're away from home for the first time, that's a transition. You know, if you're living off campus, you're paying rent and doing all those type of things for the first time. So there's a lot of distractions. And then on top of that, you throw on this NIL money and, you know, I'm going to do a commercial. I'm going to go do this. How would I pay taxes on this money? You know, where do I get the next money from? So there's a lot of distractions right now for these guys, especially at those places like a Texas A&M that's, you know, dishing out a lot of money right now for their players. Might be a little bit of an advantage for the Marshalls and the East Carolinas and Appy States of the world right now, because they're not, even though they're trying to get those things done for their players, it's not to the level, you know, that those programs are having to deal with right now.
Coach Doug Martin on the line with us here. We've talked about you've got a son coaching at Wake Forest. Hartman came back and was just absolutely awesome. And that's just whether you're a Wake fan or not. By the way, who hates Wake Forest? Nobody hates Wake Forest. Might not have a ton of people rooting for him, but nobody hates him. So it's really cool to see Hartman come back and have a really, really pretty marvelous game statistically against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, to come back from a really serious, you know, not an injury, but he had a blood clot in his arm. Which,
medical situation.
Really serious, really serious medical situation. Had to have a surgery. But being up there and watching them practice this summer, I could really tell he is the heartbeat of their football team. Man, he's got some moxie about him. The players love him. I think he's where their confidence comes from. So, you know, to get him back was huge for them, because Vanderbilt was really playing well. They've got a really good quarterback and doing some good things. So that was a huge win for Wake Forest. And I think he threw 4 touchdown passes in that game. And but again, I'm going to tell you where Wake Forest has gotten a lot better is defensively. You know, they shut down the Vanderbilt quarterback, and I mean, he is a good player. He can run, he can do some things. So they've got Liberty this week, and then Clemson, which that'll be the big one
tough.
for them, because
tough
that's
2 weeks
in the nemesis. Yeah, that'll be the tough one for them, one that kind of dictate how far they can really go.
Coach, let me ask you, you got to enjoy the tailgate. Now, where'd you get to watch the game from? Did you get a hookup or what?
You know, Henry took care of us. We were in
Did he really? That
yeah.
is your pay for these appearances on this thing. That's what that was.
It was worth it. It was worth it. It was nice. We had Harold Varner III was up there a little bit. Got to talk with him, talk some professional golf, and that was really interesting, getting his take on things. And of course, Coach Logan and I got to sit up there and talk and meet some different people. And so yeah, but man, I'll tell you what, those suites in East Carolina,
they're pretty good.
Nice. Yeah,
they've
done that stuff right up there. So, you know, that's the thing. Somebody was asking us, so how these suites compare to suites at other universities? And Logan and I were like, I don't know. We've never been in one before. All we've done is stand on the sideline all day.
Now, I don't want to tell who told me this last year, but Logan came to a game last year. Coach Logan came to a game last year. And he still views this game like, you know, the blitz is coming. what they're doing pre-snap, like any coordinator, like any coach does. Were you doing some of that?
Yeah, when you coach as long as we do, you
Yeah.
can't look at a game without looking at it through a coach's lens. And I tell you what, too, you have PTSD from coaching. Because when you see something stupid happen,
Right.
if some player does something that they're not supposed to do, it just ticks you off because you've been through that before too. And Steve and I were talking about that golly, you watch these games and some knucklehead gets a penalty that he shouldn't get, or goes the wrong way or something, and it's just like it brings back the memories. Oh, remember when so and so did that when we were playing? And but it was good. We got to rehash a lot of good memories.
We got Campbell coming in this week, and maybe just a word or two on that, but a couple of other things from the game, ECU and ODU. Holt Naylor's probably may have hung onto the ball a little too long a couple times, but I mean, played a pretty good game in my opinion. Now I've seen him a lot more than you have, but what'd you think of his play at quarterback tonight?
Oh, I thought he played a really good game. Particularly the weather conditions. That's difficult for a quarterback to play in. He did a good job taking care of the football. He got them in the end zone. To me, the most impressive thing was the emotion that East Carolina played with. That's hard coming off a loss like NC State. It's easy to have a hangover the next week. And so their coaches did a great job of getting them prepared emotionally to play a good ODU team and come off a big win themselves. But that's the biggest part of it, is getting over that loss and getting back on the saddle and playing well. And so I think they got better as a team Saturday, and that's what you want. They've got some games coming up. Campbell, you can't lose to anybody whose mascot is a camel. I mean, that just can't happen, right? That cannot happen. So they're not going to do that. But they've got to get better in each of these games. They've got games coming up that are very winnable for them. But I think the key for them is to improve each week. And, so that when you do get those tougher games, you're a fine-tuned team.
What do you think of the ODU quarter? Of course, he had Allie Jennings, the receiver, who was awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, what did you think of that tandem plus Hayden Wolf, the quarterback with ODU? What were your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I tell you what, he was a lot more impressive throwing the ball in person than he was on TV the week before. And I've always said you got to see a quarterback play in person to really know what they're like. But he throws a nice ball. He's got a strong arm. He's really accurate. Not probably quite as mobile as what you'd like to have, but he's got some good weapons around him. You mentioned the receiver. They've got a nice little setup there, and they put a lot in the program at ODU. And I'd say down the road, they got a chance to be a good program.
No, I think everybody kind of talks about what's happened to Virginia Tech. This isn't the biggest reason, but I think I think ODU starting a program. A lot of those kids that might have gone and sat on the bench at Virginia Tech for 2 or 3 years, they can probably play a lot sooner at ODU. Mm-hmm. And I think James Madison's emergence has maybe hurt. Not so much. Tech's going to get their front line. The best 22 are going to Tech theoretically.
Right.
But it's that second 22. That depth has been hurt a little bit, I think, by ODU and JMU.
Yeah, well, when Frank Beamer was there and had that program rolling, they owned that Tidewater area in recruiting. And that Tidewater area, I mean, that's, Michael Vick, Ronald Curry, all those guys came out of there. That's a tremendous football area. And Virginia Tech, I mean, Virginia couldn't steal players from Virginia Tech down there for a long period of time. They just owned that area. So I think that's going to be important for them to get back into that mode of recruiting, because they don't have the players now that they had at that time. Now, I don't know, is that recruiting? Is that developing players? Has that been guys coaching change and transfers and all those type of things? Time will tell on that type of stuff. But you're right. The emergency of other programs like ODU and James Madison, it does take a toll after a while too on everybody. Same in North Carolina. You look at App State, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Before East Carolina didn't have to compete with them in recruiting. Now you do. So, it just keeps getting harder.
It's always good to teach after a win. I think that's what Mike Houston was kind of looking forward to this week, and Blake Harrell and Donnie Kirkpatrick. They were looking for, and all the coaches. We won, but we have a lot of correctable things. So if you're from what you saw, what would be some areas you would have been concentrating on to kind of polish up going into this week?
Yeah, I think it's critical areas for both offense and defense. Red zone is something you've always got to continue to work on and grow on, because it changes from week to week how you're going to attack opponents down there. offensively and defensively. And third downs, get off the field on defense, offensively, make sure you're converting and putting yourself in good situations. So it's all those type of situations I think you're looking at that they'll continue to improve on. And then always the kicking game. The kicking game is always going to determine 2 games for each year. So I think those are things that they're going to have to look at. And it also gives them a chance. They've got Navy coming up in 2 weeks, which is always a difficult team. They're struggling for some reason, which is really odd because they're usually really a great offensive football team, and that's where they really seem to be struggling right now. But that offense takes some time to get ready for. So this may give East Carolina, maybe a little extra time to get ready for that game.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on with us. We'll get you some more boating and sweet hookups to pay your massive fee to appear on this humble radio program. But it's always awesome to talk to you, and we'll hope we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and great to see all the people back in East Carolina. So we'll be back soon.